Marcus Johnson sat quietly in his wheelchair at the airport terminal, his hands nervously tapping the armrests. At 12 years old, he was used to the stares from strangers. Some looked with pity, others with curiosity, but Marcus had learned to focus on the excitement of new adventures instead of the uncomfortable attention. "You ready for your first international trip, champ?" his father Robert asked, placing a gentle hand on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus nodded eagerly, his bright eyes scanning the busy airport. "So ready. I can't believe we're going to visit 3 countries." What most people in the crowded terminal didn't know was that Robert Johnson wasn't just any businessman taking his son on vacation. Robert was the founder and majority owner of Skyline Airways, the very airline they would be flying today. His company had grown from a small regional carrier to one of the nation's most successful airlines in just 15 years. Despite his wealth and position, Robert dressed simply in jeans and a button-up shirt. He rarely appeared in public photos or media events, preferring to run his business behind the scenes. This privacy meant that even most of his own employees wouldn't recognize him if they passed him on the street. "Dad, will my wheelchair be okay in the cargo hold?" Marcus asked, a hint of worry in his voice. Robert knelt down to eye level with his son. "The staff will take good care of it, and we'll have your walking braces for when we land. Remember what Dr. Collins said about using them more on this trip?" Marcus nodded. His cerebral palsy made walking difficult, but he had been working hard in physical therapy. The late braces helped him maintain independence for shorter distances, though he still needed the wheelchair for longer periods of movement. A voice came over the airport speakers announcing the pre-boarding for their flight. Robert looked at his watch and then at the boarding pass in his hand. "That's us," he said. "Ready to board first." What made Robert different from many wealthy business owners was his commitment to experiencing his own company's service exactly as regular customers did. He could have easily taken the company's private jet or made special arrangements, but he deliberately booked standard first-class tickets under their names. No special treatment, no announcements to the crew about who was flying. "If we can't provide excellent service to every passenger," Robert often told his executive team, "then we're failing at our mission." As they approached the gate, the agent smiled warmly at Marcus. "We're ready for you to board now, young man." Marcus wheeled himself forward while Robert carried their small carry-on bags. The jetway sloped gently downward toward the aircraft door, and Marcus handled the incline with practiced ease. At the aircraft door, they were greeted by Veronica Mills, a flight attendant with perfectly styled hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good morning," she said, barely glancing at Marcus before looking to Robert. "Do you need assistance getting him settled?" Robert noticed the slight dismissal in her tone, speaking about Marcus rather than to him, but kept his expression neutral. "My son can speak for himself, thank you." Marcus looked up at the flight attendant. "I can transfer to my seat on my own, but thank you for asking." For a brief moment, Veronica's smile faltered as she stepped aside to let them pass. Neither Marcus nor Robert could see the slight roll of her eyes as they moved into the cabin, or hear her quiet sigh of impatience. Little did Veronica Mills know that this seemingly routine interaction was the beginning of a chain of events that would change not only her career, but the entire airline's approach to passengers with disabilities. #Flight Attendant Bullies Disabled Black Boy, not knowing he's the airline owner's son. Part 2. Marcus settled into his first-class seat by the window while his father stored their carry-on bags in the overhead compartment. The spacious cabin of the Skyline Airways flight looked exactly as Robert had designed it 3 years ago: comfortable leather seats, soft lighting, and plenty of room for passengers to move around. "Is this your first time flying?" asked an elderly woman in the seat across the aisle, smiling kindly at Marcus. "No, ma'am," Marcus replied politely. "I've flown before, but this is my first international trip." The woman's eyes lit up. "How wonderful! Where are you headed?" "We're going to London first, then Paris, and finally Rome," Marcus explained, his excitement evident in his voice. "Dad says it's important to experience different cultures." Robert sat down beside his son, listening to the conversation with a small smile. He had worked hard as a single father to give Marcus every opportunity possible, never allowing his son's disability to limit his experiences. After Marcus's mother died when he was just 4 years old, Robert had thrown himself into both his business and fatherhood with equal dedication. Flight attendant Veronica Mills moved through the cabin, offering pre-flight beverages to first-class passengers. When she reached Robert and Marcus, her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Something to drink before takeoff?" she asked, directing her question to Robert while barely acknowledging Marcus. "I'd like apple juice, please," Marcus said before his father could answer. Veronica's eyes flickered briefly to Marcus. "Of course. And for you, sir?" she asked, turning back to Robert. "Just water for me, thank you," Robert replied, carefully observing the interaction. As the owner of the airline, he paid close attention to how his staff treated every passenger, especially those who might need additional consideration. As Veronica walked away, Robert leaned closer to Marcus. "How are you feeling? Excited about seeing Big Ben tomorrow?" Marcus nodded eagerly. "And the Tower of London? Do you think we'll see any ghosts?" Robert laughed. "I don't know about ghosts, but we'll definitely see the crown jewels and learn about all that history you've been reading about." The flight attendants began their safety demonstration at the front of the cabin. Marcus watched with interest, even though he had seen it many times before. Safety was something Robert had instilled in his son from an early age, both as a father and as someone responsible for thousands of passengers daily. When Veronica came back with their drinks, she placed Robert's water on his tray table carefully, but almost carelessly slid Marcus's juice toward him, causing a few drops to spill. "Oops, be careful there," she said with a hint of condescension in her voice. Marcus quickly grabbed a napkin to wipe up the small spill. "It's okay, I got it." Robert noticed the subtle difference in treatment but remained silent for now. Throughout his career, he had learned the value of observing situations fully before taking action. As both a business owner and a black man in a predominantly white industry, he had developed a keen sense for distinguishing between poor service and something more concerning. "Dad," Marcus whispered after Veronica moved on, "I think that lady doesn't like me very much." Robert put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Sometimes people have bad days, Marcus. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt for now." The truth was, Robert had built his airline on principles of inclusivity and exceptional service. Skyline Airways had won awards for customer satisfaction precisely because Robert insisted on treating every passenger with dignity and respect. If Veronica's behavior continued, it would be a direct violation of everything the company stood for. As the plane began taxiing toward the runway, neither Marcus nor Robert could have predicted just how much this routine flight would reveal about the true character of Skyline Airways employees, or how it would ultimately transform the airline itself. The aircraft reached cruising altitude, and the seatbelt sign dinged off. Passengers began to move about the cabin, stretching their legs after takeoff. Marcus adjusted his position in his seat, trying to get comfortable for the long flight ahead. "Dad, I need to use the restroom," Marcus said quietly. Robert nodded. "Do you want me to help you, or would you like to try using your braces?" "I'll use my braces," Marcus decided confidently. "Dr. Collins said I should practice walking when I can." Robert smiled with pride at his son's determination. He retrieved Marcus's leg braces from their carry-on and discreetly helped him put them on. Marcus stood carefully, steadying himself against the seat. Veronica Mills happened to be walking down the aisle with a tray of hot towels when she noticed Marcus blocking her path. Her pleasant customer service smile vanished immediately. "Sir, you need to stay seated when the cart is coming through," she said sharply. "I'm sorry," Marcus replied. "I was just going to the restroom." Veronica looked irritated. "Well, you'll have to wait until I finish service." Robert spoke up. "My son has been waiting patiently. The seatbelt sign is off, and he's using his leg braces instead of his wheelchair to practice walking. Perhaps you could pause for a moment to let him pass?" Veronica's lips pressed into a thin line. "Fine," she said coldly, "but please be quick about it." As Marcus carefully made his way past her, Veronica tapped her foot impatiently and muttered under her breath, "Some people really shouldn't fly if they can't manage themselves." The comment wasn't meant to be heard, but both Marcus and Robert caught it clearly. Marcus's face fell, but he continued to the restroom with as much dignity as his 12-year-old shoulders could muster. 2 rows back, an older woman named Elaine Parker frowned deeply. A retired elementary school teacher, Elaine had spent 40 years advocating for children with disabilities. She had clearly heard the flight attendant's comment and didn't miss the look of hurt on the young boy's face. When Robert tried to catch Veronica's attention to request a blanket from Marcus a few minutes later, she pretended not to see him, moving quickly to the other side of the cabin. "I'll get that for you," said another flight attendant named James, who had noticed the interaction. He returned promptly with a blanket and a kind smile for Marcus. "Is there anything else you need?" "No, thank you," Marcus said, his voice quieter than before. Throughout the meal service, Veronica's behavior toward Marcus grew increasingly problematic. When she served their meals, she placed Robert's tray down carefully but practically dropped Marcus's tray, causing his silverware to clatter loudly. "Try not to make a mess," she said with a condescending smile. When sudden turbulence hit during the meal, Marcus's drink tipped over, spilling water onto his tray. Veronica walked by and sighed dramatically. "This is exactly what I was talking about," she said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Now I have to clean this up." Robert's expression darkened. "My son didn't cause the turbulence." "Of course not," Veronica replied with false sweetness. "But special accommodations always mean extra work for everyone else." Marcus stared down at his lap, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. Robert placed a protective hand on his son's shoulder, his jaw tightening with controlled anger. In the row behind them, Elaine Parker quietly used her phone to take notes about what she was witnessing. She had seen enough discriminatory behavior in her lifetime to recognize it clearly. "Dad," Marcus whispered, "why doesn't she like me?" Robert leaned close to his son. "This has nothing to do with you, Marcus. Some people carry prejudice in their hearts, and that's their burden, not yours. I promise you, this situation will be addressed." What Veronica still didn't realize was that her career at Skyline Airways was hanging by an increasingly thin thread. With each dismissive comment and each act of poor service, she was digging herself deeper into trouble, all under the watchful eye of the very man who had the power to determine her future with the company. Elaine Parker had been watching the situation unfold for over 2 hours now. The retired teacher adjusted her reading glasses and continued making notes on her phone. In her 40 years of teaching, she had developed a strong sense of justice, especially when it came to children being mistreated. The flight hit another patch of turbulence, and the captain's voice came over the intercom asking flight attendants to take their seats. Veronica Mills passed by Marcus's row with a cart, moving too quickly. The cart bumped Marcus's elbow, which was slightly extended into the aisle. "You need to keep your arms inside your seat area," Veronica snapped. "This is a safety issue." Marcus quickly pulled his arm in. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." "It's always something, isn't it?" Veronica interrupted, not bothering to lower her voice. Several passengers looked up from their books and screens, uncomfortable with her tone. Robert Johnson's patience was visibly wearing thin. "Excuse me, but my son apologized. There's no need to speak to him that way." Veronica's fake smile returned. "Sir, I'm simply enforcing safety protocols. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to secure the cabin for turbulence." As she walked away, James, the more attentive flight attendant, noticed the tension and approached their row. "Is everything all right here? Can I get you anything?" "Actually," Robert said calmly, "I'd like to speak with the lead flight attendant when it's convenient." James nodded. "Of course, sir. I'll let Lisa know once the seatbelt sign is off." Marcus fidgeted with his blanket, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "Dad, it's okay. We don't need to make a big deal about it." Robert looked at his son with gentle eyes. "Marcus, when people treat others unfairly, it's important to speak up. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who might face the same treatment." Behind them, Elaine Parker made her decision. She carefully unbuckled her seatbelt when the turbulence subsided and made her way toward the rear galley where James was organizing drink supplies. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I hope I'm not overstepping, but I feel I should say something about what I've been observing." James looked up. "What is it, ma'am?" "That young boy with the leg braces in row 3. I've been watching how your colleague Veronica has been treating him. It's completely unacceptable." Elaine's voice was firm but hushed. "I was an educator for 40 years, and I recognize discriminatory behavior when I see it." James's expression grew serious. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I've noticed some tension myself. Would you be willing to speak with our lead flight attendant about this?" "Absolutely," Elaine replied without hesitation. Meanwhile, in the front galley, Lisa Bennett, the lead flight attendant, was reviewing service notes when another crew member whispered something that made her eyes widen. "Are you sure?" Lisa asked, her voice barely audible. The crew member nodded. "I recognized him from the company newsletter. That's definitely Robert Johnson in 3A, and the boy must be his son." Lisa took a deep breath, processing this information. Robert Johnson, the founder and owner of Skyline Airways, was on their flight, traveling incognito with his son, watching one of their flight attendants deliver substandard and potentially discriminatory service. "Does Veronica know?" Lisa asked. "I don't think so. She's been treating his son poorly since boarding." Lisa closed her eyes briefly. "We need to address this immediately, without creating a scene. And Veronica needs to improve her service right now, without knowing who he is. This should never happen to any passenger, regardless of who they are." Back in the cabin, Marcus leaned toward his father. "Dad, that nice lady from across the aisle went to talk to the other flight attendant. I think she's telling him about Ms. Veronica." Robert nodded, watching Elaine's interaction with James. "Sometimes, Marcus, people stand up for what's right, even when it doesn't directly affect them. That's courage." The tension in the cabin was building, though most passengers remained unaware of the storm brewing. Veronica continued her duties, oblivious to the fact that her behavior had not only been noticed by her colleagues and other passengers, but that she had been unknowingly disrespecting the son of the man who signed her paychecks. As Lisa prepared to address the situation, the flight continued its path across the Atlantic, carrying with it the mounting tension that would soon come to a head. Lisa Bennett, the lead flight attendant, approached row 3 with a professional smile. She had been with Skyline Airways for 12 years and prided herself on excellent service. The news that Robert Johnson, the airline's founder and owner, was on board had sent ripples of anxiety through the crew, except for Veronica, who remained unaware. "Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson," Lisa said warmly, addressing Robert directly. "I hope you and your son are enjoying your flight so far. Is there anything I can do to make your journey more comfortable?" Robert appreciated her professional demeanor, but noticed she had used his name though he hadn't introduced himself. "Have we met before?" he asked carefully. Lisa maintained her composure. "No, sir, but I've attended several company events where you've spoken. It's an honor to have you on board today." Marcus looked at his father with surprise. "Dad, she knows who you are?" A few passengers nearby glanced over with interest. Robert hadn't wanted his identity to become a focal point of their trip, but the cat was now out of the bag, at least with the crew. "Yes, Marcus, remember I told you I started this airline before you were born," Robert explained quietly. Lisa knelt to be at eye level with Marcus. "It's very nice to meet you, Marcus. If you need anything at all during our flight, please don't hesitate to ask me personally." As Lisa stood up, she noticed Veronica watching the interaction from the galley with confusion. Lisa excused herself and quickly walked back to where Veronica was preparing the mid-flight snack service. "What was that about?" Veronica asked. "Why are you giving them special treatment?" Lisa pulled Veronica aside, speaking in a hushed but urgent tone. "Veronica, that man in 3A is Robert Johnson." Veronica's blank expression made it clear the name meant nothing to her. "Robert Johnson, the founder and owner of Skyline Airways," Lisa clarified. "This entire airline, your employer, is his company." The color drained from Veronica's face. "What? That can't be right. The owner would be flying private, not commercial." "Mr. Johnson is known for regularly traveling on his own airline to experience the service as a normal passenger," Lisa explained. "And that young boy you've been rude to all flight? That's his son." Veronica's hands began to shake slightly as she arranged crackers on a serving plate. "I wasn't being rude. I was just following procedures." "We've had multiple passengers comment on your treatment of that child," Lisa said firmly. "James is currently speaking with a retired teacher who has documented several incidents of what she's calling discriminatory behavior." Panic flashed across Veronica's face. "But I didn't know." "That's exactly the point," Lisa interrupted. "It shouldn't matter who they are. Every passenger deserves respect and courtesy. That's the foundation of our airline's service philosophy." In the cabin, Elaine Parker had returned to her seat after speaking with James. She leaned across the aisle toward Marcus. "How are you doing, young man?" she asked kindly. Marcus smiled shyly. "I'm okay, thank you for asking." I was a teacher for many years, Elaine told him. And do you know what I learned? That every single student deserves respect, no matter what challenges they might face. Robert nodded appreciatively at Elaine. Thank you for your kindness. Back in the galley, the captain had left the cockpit briefly to speak with Lisa after being informed of the situation. Is there a problem I should be aware of? Captain Rivera asked quietly. We're handling it, Lisa assured him. But Mr. Johnson has requested to speak with me about one of our flight attendants. Captain Rivera's expression grew serious. This is not the kind of publicity our airline needs. Make sure this situation is resolved professionally. As the captain returned to the cockpit, Veronica stood frozen in the galley, the reality of her actions sinking in. Her job, her career, everything she had worked for could be in jeopardy because of how she had treated a child. The owner's child, no less. What do I do now? She whispered, genuine fear in her voice. Lisa's expression was firm, but not unkind. You continue providing service with the professionalism this airline expects to all passengers. And later, you'll need to address your behavior with Mr. Johnson. The flight was only halfway to London, but for Veronica Mills, it had already become the longest journey of her career. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted noticeably during the second half of the flight. Veronica now approached Marcus and Robert with exaggerated politeness, her smile strained and her hands slightly trembling. Can I offer you a warm cookie or some ice cream? She asked Marcus, her voice unnaturally sweet. Marcus glanced at his father before answering. Ice cream would be nice, thank you. Of course, coming right up? Veronica replied with forced enthusiasm before hurrying away. Robert leaned closer to his son. That was quite a change in attitude, wasn't it? Marcus nodded, looking confused. Why is she being so nice now? Did you say something to her? I haven't spoken with her yet, Robert explained quietly. But I think she may have discovered who we are. When Veronica returned with Marcus's ice cream, she had arranged it elaborately with extra chocolate sauce and a small garnish of mint. Here you go. Special dessert for a special young man. Her voice was pitched higher than normal. Thank you, Marcus said politely, though he looked uncomfortable with the sudden attention. Robert observed the interaction silently. Throughout his career, he had faced many challenging situations, watching someone mistreat his son and then completely reverse course upon learning of his position struck a particularly painful chord. The aircraft began its descent toward London. As passengers prepared for landing, Lisa approached Robert's row. Mr. Johnson, the captain has invited you and Marcus to exit the aircraft first after we land. Also, I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience during your flight today. Robert smiled politely but shook his head. Thank you, but that won't be necessary. We'll deplane with the other passengers in our row. However, I would appreciate speaking with you and Ms. Mills after everyone has disembarked. Lisa nodded. Of course, sir. I'll arrange that. As the plane touched down at Heathrow Airport, Marcus watched through the window with excitement, temporarily forgetting the uncomfortable interactions of the flight. Dad, we're in London, he exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. Robert squeezed his son's shoulder. Yes, we are. The first stop on our adventure. The aircraft pulled up to the gate, and passengers began gathering their belongings. True to his word, Robert waited for their row's turn to exit rather than accepting special treatment. As they moved toward the door, Veronica stood rigid with a frozen smile, avoiding direct eye contact. Thank you for flying with us today, she said mechanically. Marcus paused briefly. Thank you for the ice cream, he said, displaying the good manners Robert had always encouraged. Once the last passenger had left, Robert and Marcus remained in the jet bridge while Lisa escorted Veronica back into the empty aircraft. The airport manager, having been alerted to Robert Johnson's presence, rushed to meet them. Mr. Johnson, what an unexpected honor. I'm Thomas Wilson, Heathrow Station Manager for Skyline Airways. Hello, Mr. Wilson, Robert replied with a nod. I appreciate your greeting, but I'm here on a personal matter regarding one of your flight attendants. Thomas Wilson's smile faltered. Of course, sir. Would you like to use our VIP lounge for this discussion? That won't be necessary. The aircraft will do fine. Robert turned to Marcus. Son, would you be comfortable waiting here with Mr. Wilson for a few minutes while I speak with the flight staff? Marcus nodded bravely. I'll be okay, Dad. Inside the now empty aircraft, Veronica stood with her hands clasped tightly together. Lisa remained beside her, while James had joined them as a witness. "Miss Mills," Robert began calmly, "I'd like to discuss your service approach today, particularly toward my son." Veronica's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Johnson, I am so deeply sorry. I had no idea who you were." Robert raised his hand to stop her. "That's exactly the problem, isn't it? The fact that you're apologizing because of who I am, rather than because of how you treated a child with a disability." Veronica fell silent, her face flushed with shame. "The question I'm left with," Robert continued, his voice steady but firm, "is whether Skyline Airways is the right place for someone who treats any passenger, regardless of who they are, the way you treated my son today." The fate of Veronica Mills's career hung in the balance as she faced the consequences of her actions. Veronica Mills stood frozen in the empty aircraft cabin, tears streaming down her face. Her career, which had spanned 8 years with Skyline Airways, now hung by a thread. Robert Johnson's expression remained calm but firm as he waited for her response. "Mr. Johnson," Veronica finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, "I have no excuse for my behavior." "You're right. It doesn't matter who your son is or who you are. What I did was wrong." Robert studied her carefully. Throughout his business career, he had faced difficult decisions about employees. Some deserved second chances, others did not. "Ms. Mills, I built this airline with a specific vision," Robert explained. "Every passenger who steps onto our aircraft deserves dignity and respect. That includes children, elderly passengers, and especially those with disabilities." Lisa and James stood silently nearby, witnessing what they expected would be Veronica's final moments as a Skyline employee. "I understand if you want to fire me," Veronica said, wiping her tears. "But before you do, I need to tell you something. My brother has multiple sclerosis. He's been in a wheelchair for the past 3 years." Robert's expression didn't change, but he listened. "I've watched how people treat him differently, with pity, impatience, or like he's invisible," Veronica continued. "It breaks my heart every time, and today I became exactly what I hate. I can't explain why, except that I was stressed about personal problems and took it out on your son. That's unforgivable." Outside on the jet bridge, Marcus sat in his wheelchair talking with Thomas Wilson about London landmarks. "Have you visited the Tower of London before?" Marcus asked. Thomas smiled. "Many times. The crown jewels are spectacular, but my favorite part is learning about the ravens." Inside the aircraft, Robert made his decision. "Firing you would be the easy solution," he told Veronica, "but it wouldn't solve the larger problem." Veronica looked up, confused. "Next month, Skyline Airways is launching a new customer service initiative focused on accessibility," Robert explained. "We're partnering with disability advocacy organizations to improve our training and services for all passengers with special needs." Lisa and James exchanged surprised glances. "Ms. Mills, I'm giving you a choice," Robert continued. "You can resign today, or you can join our new accessibility team and help develop this program. You would work directly with our training department to create modules that teach flight attendants how to properly assist passengers with various disabilities." Veronica's mouth opened in shock. "You want me to help develop the program? After how I behaved?" "Sometimes the people who need to learn the most are the ones who should eventually teach others," Robert replied. "Your experience with your brother gives you insight, and today's failure gives you a powerful lesson to share. But make no mistake, this isn't an easy option. You'll be on probation for 6 months, and you'll need to work directly with advocacy groups, including people with the same disability as my son." Thomas Wilson entered the aircraft with Marcus, who looked curiously at the adults' serious faces. "Is everything okay, Dad?" Marcus asked. Robert walked over to his son. "Yes, Marcus. Ms. Mills and I were just discussing some important changes for Skyline Airways. Changes that I think will help a lot of people in the future." Veronica took a deep breath and approached Marcus's wheelchair, kneeling down to his eye level. "Marcus, I treated you very poorly today, and I am truly sorry. There's no excuse for how I acted. If you and your father will give me the chance, I'd like to learn how to do better, not just for you, but for everyone who flies with us." Marcus studied her face for a moment before speaking. "My dad always says everyone deserves a second chance if they're really sorry." Robert placed his hand on his son's shoulder with pride. This 12-year-old boy, who had faced challenges all his life, was showing more wisdom and grace than many adults. So, Ms. Mills, Robert said, "What's your decision? Resignation or redemption?" Veronica stood up, wiping away the last of her tears. "Redemption, sir. I choose redemption." 6 months had passed since that fateful flight to London. The terminal at John F. Kennedy International Airport buzzed with activity as passengers moved through security checkpoints and hurried to their gates. At Gate 23, a special ceremony was taking place. A blue ribbon stretched across the jetway entrance to a Skyline Airways aircraft. A small crowd had gathered, including media representatives, airline staff, and several people in wheelchairs or using mobility aids. Marcus Johnson, now 13, sat beside his father in the front row. He wore a crisp button-up shirt and a confident smile. The past 6 months had seen remarkable progress in his physical therapy. He now used his leg braces for longer periods and relied on his wheelchair less frequently. Robert Johnson approached the podium, adjusting the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today," he began. 6 months ago, Skyline Airways made a commitment to become the most accessible airline in the industry. Today, we're proud to unveil our Sky for All program. Cameras flashed as Robert gestured toward a poster showing the new initiative's logo, a stylized airplane with universal accessibility symbols incorporated into the design. Every Skyline Airways aircraft now features adjustable aisle chairs, accessible restrooms, and dedicated spaces for service animals, Robert explained. But the most important change isn't physical, it's in how we train our staff. He motioned to a woman standing nearby. "I'd like to introduce Veronica Mills, who now heads our accessibility training department." Veronica stepped forward, looking vastly different from the flight attendant who had bullied Marcus 6 months earlier. Gone was the artificial smile and cold demeanor. She now carried herself with genuine warmth and purpose. "When Mr. Johnson gave me a second chance after I failed to provide proper service to his son, I made a promise to transform not just my own behavior, but to help change our entire airline," Veronica said. She glanced at Marcus with a respectful nod. "Working with disability advocates and learning directly from passengers with various needs has been the most rewarding experience of my career." Every Skyline employee now completes 40 hours of accessibility training, including simulation exercises where they navigate our aircraft using wheelchairs, while wearing vision-limiting goggles or using other tools that help them understand different disabilities. From the audience, Elaine Parker, the retired teacher who had witnessed the original incident, smiled with approval. Robert had tracked her down afterward and invited her to join the advisory board for the new program. "I'm pleased to announce that Skyline Airways has been awarded the highest accessibility rating by 3 independent travel organizations," Robert continued. "But the true measure of our success is in the experiences of our passengers." Marcus wheeled himself forward to join his father at the podium. With the confidence that comes from feeling truly valued, he addressed the crowd. 6 months ago, something bad turned into something good, Marcus said clearly. Ms. Veronica made a mistake, but instead of just getting fired, she learned and helped change things for kids like me and anyone who needs extra help when they fly. The audience applauded as Marcus continued. "Now when I fly, the flight attendants know how to help me without making me feel different or like I'm causing trouble. And my dad says thousands of other passengers are having better experiences too." Veronica stepped forward again. "We've already trained over 3,000 Skyline employees, and we're now offering our program to other airlines." Mr. Johnson believes that accessibility shouldn't be a competitive advantage. It should be an industry standard. After the ceremony, as passengers boarded the inaugural flight showcasing the new accessibility features, Marcus wheeled up beside Veronica. "Ms. Veronica, are you happy you got a second chance?" he asked. Veronica knelt down to look him in the eye. "Marcus, that second chance changed my life. I was so focused on my job that I forgot the most important part. The people. You and your father taught me that sometimes our biggest mistakes can lead to our greatest purpose." As the aircraft prepared for takeoff, Robert watched his son chatting comfortably with the flight crew. What had begun as a simple family vacation had transformed not just one airline, but was beginning to change the entire industry's approach to passengers with disabilities. Sometimes, Robert thought, the most powerful changes come from the most unexpected moments.